Welcome back, everybody. Today we've got a big bag of Canadian junk or scrap silver. We've got older stuff, we've got some BU stuff, we've even got something that's still in the mint wrapper. This is going to be a good one. Hey everybody, this is James and you're watching my channel Cadroll Hunter, and we've got a huge bag of Canadian scrap silver. This is my biggest purchase ever. This is, you can see how full that is. This is $28 face value. We've got dimes, quarters, 50-cent pieces. We've got some dollar coins, and you can even see I've got a $1963 here that's still in the mint package. So let's dump this out. Let's see what we've got. We'll sort it out. We'll see if there's any interesting finds in here, varieties, etc. This is going to be a good one for sure. Okay, here we go. Oh yeah, this is great. You can see there's some BU stuff in here as well. There's some really cool stuff. And here is that dollar coin still in the mint packaging. A little bit of toning, that's pretty cool. What I'm gonna do is sort this out by denomination and by era. We'll be looking, of course, at who are the monarchs at those times. We got a lot of things to look at, so this is really fantastic. Okay, I've got everything here organized by denomination and by monarch and decade. I went at a really good time to look through the scrap silver bins. My dealer had tons of silver and let me go through and pick out what I wanted. So what you see here is a lot of the older stuff. We've even got a bunch of King George V and some older commemorative dollars, which is really cool. So that was really great. And I picked out some nice shiny BU ones as well. So what we'll do is we'll go through, I'll give you an idea of what we got here, starting with the dimes. So we'll got them sorted out like this. We'll look at them here and then we'll put them up by year. So I have one undated dime. I can't make a date off of that at all. It's pretty slick. But I have 6 from the 20s. I have 15 from the 30s with King George V, and another 7 30s with King George VI. I've got 20 from the 40s, 7 50s King George VI, just a couple of laureate portrait from the 50s, and I have 13 Elizabeth II from the 60s. Some of them are BU. There's a couple that are a little more circulated, but got a good stack of stuff there. So that's what we've got. What I'll do is sort them out by year so we can see what we ended up getting. All right, so I've laid out all of our dimes, and we got a really wide assortment of dates. And if we go back to our King George V, you'll see that we have this one undated one. This could be from the teens, just based on the wear. It's going to be impossible to know for sure. But we got everything from the 20s otherwise. We got a couple 20s, a few 21s, 28 and a 29, and those are the only 4 years that the dime was minted in Canada. So we got everything from the 20s, and if we go into 30s, we have everything from the 30s in the King George V and King George VI years, with the exception of the 1937. So going back, we got a few 30s, a couple 31s, a 32. It's a little hard to make out, but that is a 32. I confirmed that under the scope. A couple 33s, a 34, a 35, and we got 5 1936s. Now the 1936 has a really rare variety. It's the 1936 dot, and you would see a dot right under the wreath. It's very rare, and it's really only in the specimen varieties. I think there's only 5 that have been certified. I checked it because I do, and we don't have it. In the King George VI, we have a couple of 1938s, and we got 5 1939s. So that's really, really cool. Over into the 40s, we got 4 1940s. We got a 41, a 42. We got, I think that is 5 1943s, a few 44s. We didn't get a 45, but we did get a 46. And we did get 4 1947s. All are just the regular 1947, not the 1947 with the maple leaf. We didn't get any of the low mintage 1948s. They were only minted at just over 420,000. No surprise there. If my silver dealer got one of those, I'm sure he would have pulled those out. And we got a 1949. If we go into the 50s, we got, oh, this is in the wrong spot here. We got a 1950. We got a few 1951s and a few 1952s. And I, of course, was picking these out, so I didn't really grab too many of the laureate portraits. There's a couple of 58s there, I think. Oh, sorry, 56s. Otherwise, I really focused on getting some of these other ones, some of these really bright and shiny BU ones, but grabbed a handful of other ones. So there's a 62, but we got a bunch of 63s, a 64, a bunch of 65s, including that really nice looking one, and a couple of 66s, including this one with the really cool toning. It's actually in really great shape and got some really cool toning. So that is everything we got in dimes. That is a really wide variety. Now I'll check some of these older dimes against my own collection and see if anything upgrades. I doubt it will, but I'll take a quick look right now and I'll let you know. Well, not surprisingly, nothing upgraded in my album, but I did want to mention a few of these here that are fairly low mintage. The 1933 is minted at 672,000, the 34 at 409,000, and the 1935, which we got one of, at only 384,000. That compares to other ones which might have been minted around 2 to 10 million, depending on what year they are. So those are pretty good pickups, I'd say. On to the quarters, and we got a good variety of dates. Again, most of this stuff is definitely in scrap silver condition, but there are a couple of updates or upgrades to my own collection, so I'll come to those. Starting here with the King George V, we have a couple that are undated. We're just not going to get a date off these ones at all. They're pretty slick, as you can see here, so they're just silver for the stack. We got a few 1920s, a couple 29s, a 30, a 31, and a couple of 36s. That 1930 is minted at just under $1 million, and the 31 is minted at just over 537,000. So not a lot of these out there. This one's got some issues. Obviously, it's quite worn, as you can see here, but it's got a couple of big dings on the rim. That's why it's in the scrap bin for sure. It might not have fetched much of a premium beyond scrap anyhow, but glad to have that in my collection. And in the King George the Sixth, we got a couple of 1938s and a 39, so really great to add some 30s quarters to my silver stack. That's really cool. A 40, and this one will upgrade the one in my collection. So if we have a peek at it, you can see it's got some marks on it, but it's actually got some pretty good detail. And when I flip it over, you can see there's a lot of detail still in the hair. That's really where we're looking at the condition. It's possible this has been cleaned, but it's got much better eye appeal. And if I just grab the 1940 that was in my binder, you can see this one has a lot more wear on the front, and there's really no detail in George's hair. So I'm going to flip that other one up. We're going to add this one to my collection. That's a good little upgrade for sure. Keep going on here. We got a 41, a 46, a couple of 47s. There are a couple of other varieties, the 47 Maple Leaf and the 47 Dot. These are not those. A couple of 48s and a 49. And then in the Queen Elizabeth, I've got a 1962, and that is a nice bright and shiny. It's got some marks from scuffing up against other coins, but this is an upgrade in my collection. I just don't have a 62 that is that nice. And a pretty nice looking 1964. Not an upgrade. I've got a really beautiful BU in my collection, but those are some great quarters to add to our stack. So we'll move on to the 50-cent pieces. I've got our 50-cent pieces here organized, and there are a few things that I'm actually really excited about. First of all, just looking at, we got a couple of these King George V 50-cent pieces from the 20s. We got a couple 1920s and a 1929. I'm excited because I don't actually have a 1920 in my collection, and because we've got two of them here, I can actually pick out the best one. Now, they're both in pretty rough condition. You can see here we've got George's pretty worn off and slick, and the same is going to be true for this one over here. So neither of them is great, but I think the one on the left has better eye appeal because you can make out the legend 50 cents Canada 1920 a little bit better. There's a variety in the 1920s. There's a wide zero and a narrow zero, and both of these are the narrow zero. That's the more common one, but I'll take them because I didn't even have one. So this one here, I'm going to flip up and put in my own book. Here's a closer look at that 1929. It's obviously also in pretty slick condition. There's a lot of wear on there, but I still find it really remarkable that we can get these coins even at scrap or, not much different than melt value. This 1929, for instance, is minted at only 228,000. So that's really low mintage. That 1920 is minted just over 500,000. So these are pretty scarce. You have to wonder how many of them actually are still out there. Some might have just sort of disappeared over time, but I'll take them at scrap value any day of the week. Moving on to our King George VI, we got a 1939, and again, this one is minted at just over 287,000, so it's hard to come by, obviously worn and circulated, but there's still some detail in there that's actually pretty good. The 41, we got a 42, a 43, and we have three 1944s. Now, most of these coins from the 40s have those varieties where the dates can be a narrow date or a wide date, and that's because the last digit was typically hand punched onto the die. So some dies, that 1, for instance, would have been very close to the 4, so a narrow date, and some would have been further away and closer to the hoof of the unicorn there and would have been a wide date. So we won't look at all of these, but one I want to look at are these 1944s. There are three varieties. There is a narrow date and a wide date with some triple dyed. The last 4 has been punched several times. And so I have 2 of the 3, but what I don't have is the narrow date. Now this coin here, just want to look at that awesome toning. It's actually in really great condition. I'm actually quite surprised this got into the scrap bin because it's largely uncirculated, but you can see that it's got some really cool toning on here. So we're going to put this one under the scope and have a look at it and see what we've got. And what we've got here is most definitely the 1944 narrow date. You can see how close that 4 is to the other 4. And look at the toning. We've got some like yellows and oranges and blues and greens. Really neat. This is one I don't have. And this one, of course, is actually with that cool toning and in actually really good condition. The field is pretty clear. There's not a lot of wear on that one. We'll take a look at these other two 1944s and see which ones we have here. So we'll look at this other one here. And this one is also the narrow 4. So we would have had some to choose from. And then this guy here is the wide 4. You can see there's actually quite a bit of space between these 4s. And that 4 is right up into the hoof of that animal there. So we had a couple of varieties, none with that triple 4. We would see some other impressions of the 4 on there. But that's really cool because we have a gorgeous spot filler. That one is going to go in my album. I'm going to flip that one up for sure. We got 3 1950s, and there's a more rare variety where there is less of a design in the 0 of the, or no design. You can see some lines in the 0. This one here isn't as easy to tell, but when I put it under the scope, there's no doubt you can see lines in the 0. So we don't have the harder to find variety, but we do have a couple of 1951s, and this is another one where I have the narrow date in my collection, but I don't have the wide date. So we'll take this really nice looking 1951 here. We'll throw that one under the scope. And this is most definitely the wide date. That there's a lot of separation between the 5 and the 1. The narrow date, the 1 is tucked up right close to the 5. And there are great examples and pictures of all of these varieties in the Charlton Guide if you look at that. So you can see here's the wide date 51. That's what we just looked at. The narrow date, it's quite a bit closer, but that is definitely the wide date. So I would very much recommend that you pick up the Charlton Guide. This is the 2020 guide, but the 2022 guide is out now, so you can pick that up. I have a link in the description below where you can get that guide. And I thought we'd just take a closer look at this other 1951. It is really toned. That's just crazy. Still, a fair amount of detail in that coin, but it's definitely been tucked away somewhere where it's got some kind of environmental damage on it, for sure. This one looks to be the narrow date, the one I already had, not the wide date that we just looked at. And just taking a look at the last few coins here, that's a 1952. That's the wide date. I already have that. The 57, this is the laureate portrait, Queen Elizabeth. There's no varieties on that one. And then this 1958, and it's in a pretty nice condition, I have to say. It got some fingerprints on it, and but there is a variety where there's a dot under the A. That's not this one here, but another great looking coin to add to our silver stack. Last but not least, we've got our dollar coins, silver dollars. So we were able to pick up some great ones. This is a 1939 commemorative. It's commemorating the royal visit. And look, this one's got some great toning. Obviously, lots of great detail. This has been definitely exposed to some elements that have caused it to tarnish, but it looks really, really cool. That is a great one. Next to it, we got a 1958. This is commemorating the 100 years of British Columbia becoming a crown territory. Previously, it was part of the Oregon tract controlled by Hudson's Bay. This is also known as the death dollar because there is a face on this totem pole here the designer added that basically is a symbol for death. Next up is the 1964 silver dollar. This is commemorating a series of meetings that were held in Charlottetown and Quebec City, basically that brokered the deal that set up Confederation in Canada, which happened in 1867. And so this one looks to be really great. There is a variety on this one. It doesn't appear on here. It looks like somebody might have even tried to clean this. It's got some scratches, but what do you expect in junk silver? But one of the varieties that we can look for is where the designer's initials appear, TS. There's a version that doesn't have this period before or after the T. And so this clearly isn't that one. I actually have that version in my collection. I don't think it commands a huge premium necessarily, but it's just something interesting that you can look for. Now, this is really cool. It's going to be hard with the glare with the plastic here, but this is a 1963 silver dollar with the laureate portrait of the Queen. Still in the mint wrapping. You can actually see it says Royal Canadian Mint on the package, and then Canada. Really cool. It's got a bit of toning on here, so there might be a little bit of like a pinhole in the plastic. And then next to that, we've got a 1965. And this one is in pretty good condition. But there, before I destroy it, there are a number of different varieties on this one here. It all has to do with the 5. There's a blunt 5 and a pointed 5, and large bead or small bead. So I'll put this one under the scope and we'll take a peek. All right, here we can see our date, and this is the blunt 5, and we're looking at the bottom of the 5 here. So the blunt 5 comes to a kind of a straight line like that, where the pointed 5 comes to a point. So this is the blunt 5. This is really exciting for me because I don't actually have a blunt 5 1965 silver dollar. So this is going to be an addition to my collection. On the back, we can look and see what the bead situation is here. I'm going to go over to Regina here. And this is the large bead variety. So we can see these beads are quite large. Again, a great resource when looking at Canadian coins is the Charlton Guide. And here is what we've got. This is the large beads, and we can see that here. They're quite large. They're really close together. There's not a lot of space between them. So that's what we're seeing here. The small bead variety, you can see there's quite a bit of space, at least the width of a bead. So that's not what we have. And we can also see the difference between the pointed 5 and the blunt 5, which is what we have. So what we have here is the large bead blunt 5, which I'm going to flip up and add to my collection. And the last one we've got here is the 1967 commemorative 100 years of Confederation with the Canada Goose on it. And so that's another great looking coin to add to my silver stack. Well, I hope you have enjoyed my video on my scrap silver purchase. We found lots of great stuff, a few things to add to my collection, and a lot of things to add to our stack. If you liked this video, please give it a like. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, CAD Roll Hunter, please hit that subscribe button so you can be alerted when I have new videos coming out. I have content coming out all the time. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.